What's up, everyone? Welcome to this next special edition Summit Podcast episode with AFSA legend himself, the greatest of all time, Kevin Ott. That's right, I had Kevin Ott on, and we had a phenomenal talk. And so we're in for a real treat as we get to know Kevin Ott on a more transparent and vulnerable setting. So get ready for an engaging conversation that covers a wide range of intriguing topics. First up, Kevin shares his unique take on leadership, emphasizing the importance of letting people make their own decisions. It's a perspective that's sure to spark some interesting thoughts. Then, we dive into Kevin's military background, where we'll explore his years of service and the moments that have shaped his career. And now you'll get a fascinating glimpse into the life of a dedicated serviceman, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We also take a closer look at risk-taking leaders, which is basically Kevin's superpower, and the impact that they have on the organization. Kevin's insights on this particular topic are both thought-provoking and inspiring. And speaking of the Air Force, Kevin takes us on a journey through time, reflecting on the incredible changes he's seen during his 30-year career, plus I believe 10 more as a civilian. It's like stepping into history, okay? Because people move so much in the military and our careers are actually pretty short in comparison to the civilian side, that he has some really fascinating perspectives and he's seen a lot of change. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. But here's where things get really interesting. Kevin proposes a bold idea to revamp the promotion system. We'll also explore the current trends in promotion, so hang tight for some eye-opening discussion there. In any career, you're bound to face disappointment, and Kevin opens up about dealing with setbacks and building resilience. His experiences offer some valuable life lessons. Ever wonder about the role of a first shirt? Kevin breaks it down for us, sharing what he's learned from that unique position. We'll also delve into Kevin's early career, where he shares some of the timeless lessons that we can all benefit from. We'll also dive into a more personal story as Kevin shares his experience with a heartfelt letter to the governor. It's a tale of the power of just one person's voice and how one person could have a domino effect and just change so much for the people around him. And to wrap it up, we'll leave you with a powerful message about the importance of having a strong voice, something that can resonate with us all. So join us for this candid and captivating conversation with Chief Master Sergeant Retired Kevin Ott. It's a journey through life and career that you'll definitely want to be a part of. And if you listen till the very end, I will tell you my number one takeaway from this talk with Kevin. Let's get after it.
Let's see here. I got it. Let's see. Got it. Boom. There we go.
Yeah, that's a new feature they added about 6 months ago. You know, it takes one person to ruin it for everyone. So I don't know. There's probably a story behind that.
Well, probably is. Yeah.
All right. So I'm talking to Chief Master Sergeant Retired Kevin Ott, the legend himself, the AFSA hero, absolutely crushing it on the Ask a Chief Facebook group and in AFSA. I finally got to meet you in person. And I got to say, you're like the nicest guy. You really
Well,
are.
you must have got me on a good day then. But no, I appreciate it, Josh, for all the kind words. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the summit, so of course you were in a good mood. That's like the best time of the year.
It's a pretty good time. Yep.
And I was gonna make this part of that series. I was making a series on the folks that I was able to talk to and some of the folks that I wasn't able to talk to. I'm doing on the back end. Then I'm gonna tie into the Summit podcast series. And so you're gonna be a part of that, you know, given that you're kind of AFSA royalty at this point. You've been grandfathered in, as they say. How long have you been a part of AFSA?
I got a membership way back around 1984, 85. Either when I was promoted to E4 Buck Sergeant or I was Airman of the Year. I was Airman of the Year once in 1984. So I used to be pretty sharp. Um,
Dang, was that at the MAGCOM level or
that
Air
was at
Force level?
a wing level, the 43rd Strategic Wing over on
Oh,
Anderson Air Force Base, Guam, way back
that was my
when.
first base.
Oh, cool, cool.
Yeah.
So I got a free membership for some reason or another. And like most people, it expired on me. I probably renewed it, rejoined a couple, three times. It expired. I probably rejoined again. And finally, around 1997 or so, with 15 years in the Air Force, I figured out, hey, let's go and make a career out of this. So I joined as a life member in 1997 in AFSA. So coming up on 26 years, if my math is right. Um, Coincidentally, I am the same age as AFSA. We're both 62
Oh, wow.
years old. So
Dang.
I got that claim to fame, and I always mention that to Keith Reed whenever we're together. So,
You just got to remind him of that.
oh yeah, be kind to your elders, Keith. I'm the same age as the association.
Right. I love that. And yeah, so I was born in 1984 and I've been serving for 19 years now. So like that's a hot minute ago. I must say. But Guam was my first base. I joined in 2004 and I used to be age, so that was a 6 month tech school. So around
Yep.
2005 I got to Anderson Air Force Base, Guam. I went with my whole tech school class.
Oh
Now,
wow.
to this day, I do not know how that happened because that's so unusual. But I must say that was the greatest thing that could have ever happened because, these people became like family to me over that 6 months. And then to go to my first base with them, I mean,
Sure.
that was an experience of a lifetime. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was manifest destiny because Shepherd gets freezing cold. Like, I mean, the wind chill there is outrageous in the wintertime. And we'd have to march like we were the farthest away from the schoolhouse and we were the farthest away from the chow hall. So, I mean,
Yeah.
we're walking like 2-3 miles a day, probably back and forth. And I would just picture being on a beach and I could march with one eye open and be half
Right.
asleep, half awake.
Yep.
I could go on autopilot and I would just put my mind on the beach. And I kid you not, when I got to that beach on base, the one that's down like the mountain,
Yep. Taragi Beach. Yep.
Taragi Beach. When I first stepped foot on Taragi Beach, I thought, my God, this is what I've been picturing. Like, did I make this happen? This is crazy.
Right.
So it was like a manifest destiny type of moment, but absolutely love Guam. I want to go back one day. I want to see, all the places that I used to hang out at and all the cool memories I have. Have you ever been back?
I have been back, and probably as you find out, you go back to some place that you were at before. All those cool places are either gone or they're changed so much that they're not the same anymore. I was there 83 to 85. That was my first assignment as well. And these were, of course, way before the days of the internet and everything. And in my tech school class, everybody else was getting stateside assignments, and I was the only one that got overseas. And it's like Guam. It's like I think I heard about Guam in history class, and all the instructors were laughing, it's grass huts, there's no electricity or whatever. So they kind of set me up a little bit there. Um,
I
but it
think
was a
that same
great,
thing happened to me.
yeah, it
I
was a
think
great assignment.
our instructor was
And
telling us there's no paved roads. Like they were just making stuff up, right? So, but
right,
we
right,
were picturing like the show Lost,
yeah,
basically.
yeah. Yeah, I was on Gilligan's Island, is what I was thinking, because of course this is before Lost. But
Right.
yeah, I didn't know. It turned out to be a great assignment. I extended a year. Uh, I remember getting off the airplane the first time when we landed at Agana International, and it was an open air airport at the time. And walking off the jetway thing, and it was like steam, 'cause it was so hot and humid at 6 a.m. or whatever time it was when we landed. It was probably already 85 degrees and 80% humidity. And I had hair then, so my hair all got all crazy and stuff. But yeah, no, it ended up being a great assignment, and I stayed there. And I stayed an extra year, and I think for any airman, that first assignment can really be, I don't say make or break, but if you have a good experience, your first assignment, there's a high likelihood you're going to want to stay around for a little while. And Guam was a great assignment, great leadership team that I had an honor of being with. And actually, I just retired as a GS back at the end of here of April. And my commander, who was my commander on Guam way back when, came to my retirement ceremony here as a GS. And
That is
40 years
wild.
later, we got to meet up again at my retirement. So that was pretty cool.
That is wow. Let's talk about full circle moment there. I love it when stuff like that happens. And I kind of made my own full circle moment happen with my son being born. So his name is Phoenix Kingston White, but we call him PK. So his name's PK White. That's actually my first commander,
Oh, cool.
Yes, Colonel PK White. He was like a Gulf War fighter pilot hero. And this was like his last assignment. He would always do commander's call playing like Metallica and get everyone like pumped up. Like
Yeah.
the guy was like a rock star. And he was a hero and he did all these cool things. And I thought, and he had the same last name as me. So I thought one day I'm going to take his name and use it somehow. And so when I had my son, I named him after this guy. And then I found him on Facebook and I let him know that, and he was blown away by it. And then he sent
Hmm.
me his autobiography, and he wrote it out to my son. He said, "I'm glad there's another PK White in the world." But he lives in San Francisco, and he's a jazz player.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he was a musician. His son was in some sort of screamo band that was really popular back then. So music must have been a big part of their lives because that's what he does full time now.
You know what he plays? What instrument?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd have to check again. Like his profile
Okay.
picture. Yeah, I'm struggling to remember, but if you look up PK White, I'm pretty sure his profile picture is him like in his band.
Okay. Reason I asked before I came in the Air Force, I was a musician. So small
Oh,
world again.
nice. Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so Chief Ott, here we go. We're gonna start with the Heroes Gauntlet. Okay, that's where I asked
Okay.
three questions right at the get-go that I prepared for you. So the first one is, what's one leadership philosophy from your time in the Air Force that never failed you?
I don't know if it's a philosophy per se, but simply making a decision is a thing that I think sets you up as a leader. You made a decision. Um, Sometimes they're not the right decision, and you adjust accordingly. But as a leader, people look to you to one lead, obviously. But here's a fork in the road, and you're sitting there and you don't know which way to go. Um, doesn't take long at all before the people that are following you have lost any respect they had for you, and they're not going to follow you anymore if you can't make a decision. So I think one of the easiest things to do, or the important things to do as a leader, is simply to make a decision.
No, I've never heard that response. Um, because it's probably like an obvious thing, but at the same time, we've all been there where we were kind of figuring out our own leadership style, and maybe we didn't make a decision, and we kind of dragged our feet. And yeah, that's a not a fun spot to be in.
No, I'm
It's
famous for making decisions, and sometimes they're not always good either. So, but
I've learned that myself. Just trying to please one crowd while not hurting the other one's feelings, and
right,
it's kind of those lessons we all have to go through. And at the end of the day, you can't make everyone happy.
right.
That's the truth of the matter. And once you learn that, it gets much easier to start making decisions.
Right. And as a leader, you're gonna take risks, and I think that's one of the things people are afraid of is taking a risk and making a decision. And then when you're in a higher level position, when you're a chief or something, and you're watching your section supervisors or whatever make decisions, and then it's easy to jump into their business and tell them, well, you should have did this, you should have done that, as opposed to just sitting back and watching it play out. Because sometimes, I would have zigged on a decision, and this person made a zag move, but it ended up at the right destination, or maybe even better than the path I would have chosen. So just to let people make a decision as well is another big thing for when you're in a leadership position.
Definitely. No, I love that. Yeah, super. A lot of we could have a whole talk on probably that if we wanted to, because there's so much layers to that. But no, I think that is a great philosophy to live by. All right, question number two. And so we're on today's September 12th. Yesterday was 9/11. And I gotta say, it's a weird time to be in the service for me right now because I'm kind of a historian at this point. And I say that because like my whole world joining was 9/11. It's what drove every single person to join at that time. Like there was no other reason. I mean, it could have been education or whatever, but it was also 9/11, right? Like that was the driving force. And to be in the military today and to have people have not only not joined for it, but had not even been alive when it happened, is just mind boggling to me. And it's such a strange time to be serving where that's kind of going away now. But enough of me rambling. My question is, where were you on 9/11 and how did that impact like your life and you being an airman?
Sure. 9/11, I was a master sergeant at Keesler. I was running tech school. I was instructor supervisor, running a three-level schoolhouse. And that morning, we were sitting in our office, myself, and I had two civilian instructor supervisors that worked for me. And our one guy, Woody, he had the radio going and announcement at whatever time in the morning it was that an airplane had struck, the World Trade Center. And, at that first moment, it was like, an accident, pilot error, it was a small plane or whatever. And of course, as more details came out, it wasn't the case. Um, but my coworker Woody had I think it was his niece or his cousin that worked in one of the towers. So definitely as the second plane hit and things were going on, I mean, he got really concerned, worried about his cousin. Luckily, she was late that day to work. I think she had an appointment or something, so didn't even make it downtown New York that day to go to work. But he was deeply concerned about her, obviously. Um, we went to lunch, myself and a couple of the retirees that were back as GSs that I worked with. We went to lunch like we normally do because again at that time in the morning it was still viewed as like as an accident. It wasn't looked at as an attack yet. And then by the time lunch was over, the base was in FPCon Delta. It took forever to get back on base. And then of course at the end of the day, we always gathered all the students, our outgoing class, the morning class, and the afternoon class in the hallway, and we passed on information or whatever. And of course, I mean, they all knew what was going on because the TVs were out and different things. But basically, I remember having all the classes there in the hallway and talking to them about the events of the day and what this could mean, and basically, you know, world as we know it has probably changed forever, which of course, we know it has changed forever. Um, and then I remember going home that evening after school, after work, and sitting watching the news. Our son was 3 years old at the time, and he was sitting on my lap as we watched the news. Um, and the tears were just streaming down my face as you watched, the horror of the news, repeating the collapse of the towers and everything, and the people. Yeah, it was something that no one ever could have predicted or thought would ever happen, obviously. And the human toll we are still paying it today. I have a
Hmm.
friend of mine that I was stationed with back in the 80s in Korea, and he separated and was working for AT&T or somebody in New York, and was actually one of the volunteers that went down in there into ground zero to help. and he's had cancer issues with the stuff he inhaled and everything. And he's had multiple surgeries for cancers and things. So the effects of this go far beyond that day and the week to follow. It goes on forever and ever and ever. But oddly enough, or whatever, ironically, the week before that, we had an exercise on base where we did the normal Air Force exercise. You put the signs on the doors, you lock the doors, and September the 7th, you never would have imagined this ever happening for real. And I remember
Mhm.
when Index was called, we were taking the signs off the doors, and I had one of my civilian instructors with me. He's a retired master sergeant, and he goes, Sergeant Ott, he says, FPCon Delta stateside. Yeah, we'll never do that. At the time, I just said, yeah, you're probably right. And if we ever did, it'd be a bad thing. And sure enough, just 3 or 4 days later, it happened. Um, and so much has changed to our daily life since then that the actual event has impacted us in so many ways that we can never even comprehend. I think as most people, particularly the airmen today, don't know any different.
Mhm.
Don't know of an Air Force that doesn't deploy. Don't know of an Air Force doesn't know what FPCon normal is. All these things that
Right.
we used to do.
They have a
Just drive
different they have
through
a
the
different
base.
norm.
Yeah, I mean the world has changed so much. Uh, air travel, everything is so different now. Yeah.
Definitely. I remember being a kid with my dad worked on Andrews, and they just salute the sticker on his car and he just keeps going.
Yep.
They just looked at a sticker on your car and you were
Oh
good to come
yeah.
on base. That's how it
You
was
either had to
before.
have a sticker on your car or a Domino's pizza sign, and you got waved on through. So
Right. It was we were spoiled, I think. Uh and I mean even the airports then I
oh
that's
yeah.
one thing I really missed because I was a kid and I could see my whole family. They would always stay at the windows
Yep.
and wave to you as you left. That was like a thing families did
Right.
back
Right.
then. And now they can't
Yep.
do that anymore. You
Right.
can't go through security if you don't have a ticket. So it's like, man, yeah, a lot has
Right.
changed. A different norm for folks today.
Yep.
All right. Third question. How long did you serve for?
30 years and 25 days.
So
And
you
we
went to the
always,
max.
yeah, retirees always throw in that number of days. And it doesn't mean, you're more dedicated or anything. It just means that you joined on a day other than the first of the month. So your retirement is the first of the month after. So I came in October the 6th, 1982, retired November 1, 2012. So 30 years and 25 days.
Dang. So yeah, you maxed out there. Um, out all those 30 years and then some change, what was your proudest Air Force moment? The moment that you were like, man, like you just felt so proud of yourself or how far you've come. It could be a person that you interacted with, it could have been a situation that you intervened in. What comes to mind?
The number one thing, and it was not making chief, because I still kind of scratch my head at how that ever happened anyway. um, at Keesler, we ran a schoolhouse. I ran a schoolhouse, and we did a big career field merger, and created a whole new tech training course. We did a lot of self help in the classrooms, and like anything of that magnitude, there's a lot of naysayers that you can't do this, you can't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this. Um, we had a great team of NCOs, of civilian instructors, and we did it. And actually, we did it ahead of schedule. We opened the schoolhouse 6 months earlier than our drop dead date. And then right after that, we had an ORI coming in from headquarters AETC. So literally, we stood up the new schoolhouse the very morning of the IG visit. Brand new curriculum, brand new classrooms, brand new equipment. Everything's all brand new. And here comes the IG rolling in to do all the normal IG stuff. And things were so fresh and new I was in probably like 4 in the morning that morning, literally signing the lesson plans for all my classrooms and sticking them in the instructor's folders so that when the IG came, you had signed lesson plans, all that kind of good stuff. But at the end of the day, at the end of the exercise, there was only one schoolhouse or one flight in the entire wing that got an overall outstanding rating, and that was our schoolhouse. Uh,
Well, you
so
absolutely crushed that.
when we got the call, hey Kevin, you guys got we're the only ones who get the outstanding rating. Um, it hit me. I just collapsed into my chair like, holy crap, you know. And that was a moment. That was the moment in my career. Other things that happened, obviously promotions and whatnot, were all good, but that was the one thing because that was really something I can say that myself and my team did that. It wasn't something that the Air Force gave you to do, then you did it. I mean, we created a lot of new processes, a lot of new things. Took a lot of grief along the way from naysayers, including folks in the group and the wing level that were, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, whatever. And then to get that kind of recognition, acknowledgement at the end was just awesome. That was great.
Yeah, I think when you when the creative control is on you and your team, and it's like this enormous pressure, and then you have people, you're kind of forced to be innovative. You're kind of forced to do new things and to take those risks. And then you've got all these people from the sideline, telling you just that you can't do this, it's gonna
Right.
fail, blah blah
Right.
blah. And then once you and that team get through that, and not only did you get through it, but you were the best. I mean, that is amazing. And I've had an experience like that myself, and I've been a healthy risk taker ever since. You know what I mean?
My
That's like a
very
superpower.
Right. I mean, I remember my very first decision I made in the Air Force as a leader. To
Oh
go back to
wow.
my first thing about making a decision. I was a student leader at tech school way back when. I was a red rope. Woohoo! Everybody's excited to hear that. Um, and it was at Keesler, and it rains all the time in Mississippi. And back then, you had uniform of the day, and uniform of the day was short sleeve blue shirt, carry raincoat. So you're all out there to march to school, and you're in short sleeve blues, and you're carrying a folded up raincoat, all weather coat we called it, and the skies opened up and it just poured down rain, and carry raincoat, carry raincoat. So we marched to the staging area, and all the other flights were there from all the other squadrons, and it's pouring down rain, and no one's wearing a raincoat. So I made a decision as a student leader, red rope. I said, let's put on our raincoats. So my flight put on raincoats. We were the only flight that had raincoats on. So we're marching down the pass and review there. And we marched down, they call them STAs and the MTLs today. He yells out, red rope, red rope. So I ran over to the STA to report. He goes, Airman, what's the uniform of the day? I says, short sleeve blues, carry raincoat. Why are you wearing raincoats? Sir, because it's raining. He just stopped for a minute, looked at me. He goes, good call. Sir, yes, sir. And I ran back to my formation. But it's like, you know, it's a simple thing. But it's like, it's just raining, put a dang coat on.
Yeah, I mean, you're
You
freaking
know,
carrying it for God's.
right, right. But
No, I
but you
love that you
didn't
use
get
common sense. Although
yeah,
you knew you might catch flack for it, you knew that
right.
that was the smart thing to do.
Yeah, I could have got a 341 pulled or could have
Right.
got restrictions for the weekend or
I
something.
would I
Yeah.
would have pulled one for excellence for that.
Yeah.
Dang. No, I love that. You know what? You just reminded me of my first decision. When you said 341, my first decision was all the way in basic training, and I was in charge of like this element of cleaning. Sometimes they find time for you to like clean things or fix things. That's like part of the experience, I guess.
Right.
And so we had to like sweep this bay out. And our flight was getting annihilated by our TIs. Like we were goofing up, and it was just like we were not in good standing. And so I made the call to the person was just so elated that we cleaned up, right? Because these are usually like random people on base who aren't an MTI. So they're like super thankful and nice to you, right? They're normal
Right.
people on the base.
Yeah.
And and she's like, "Yeah, I wish I could repay you. That's amazing that y'all did all this." I said, "Well, we were told that we have to give you a 341 and this is how you could help us. If you take this
Yeah.
341 and you say that it's for excellence for every one of us, you actually could help us and repay us." And she's like, "All right,
Right.
done." And so I show up with this stack of 341s for excellence. And my TI was like, "Really? How did this happen?" I said,
Right.
we just did an amazing job," they said.
Yeah.
And I kind of bent the rules a little bit to make that happen. But that was the
Yeah.
first decision that I made to kind of turn the tables and to get in a better standing.
Right. Right. Yeah, rules are rules, but sometimes you got to bend them a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
It's
All right.
all for the
So,
better good.
yes, we're going to hit our three topics here. First one,
Sure.
changes in the Air Force over the last 40 years, good and bad. The second one, disappointment and resiliency in your career. And the third one, you as a retiree and your community involvement through AFSA and Ask a Chief Facebook group. So we'll start with the first one, and I'm really curious to hear what you have to say about this. Changes in the Air Force over the last 40 years, good and bad. So what comes to mind when you hear that?
Well, I mean, the Air Force was built on change. And in 1982, we were complaining about something. Airmen have been complaining about something since 1947. So it's nothing new for the Air Force to change things to hopefully make it better for the airmen. Along the ways, there's been some good changes. Um, I mean, some of it's just is laughable when you think about it. But remember back in basic training, you got one set of glasses, you got the old, the BCGs, birth control glasses. And over the years, it probably took decades before they came out with like frame of choice. So you could get different styles of glasses. And
Mhm.
that was a cool thing. I mean, you no longer were quite as handicapped as you were with the BCGs on. PT, when I came in, I mean, you ran once a year. Unfortunately, some people only ran once a year. So when it came time to run that once a year, some people didn't make it literally. So the Air Force, again, sometimes the Air Force decides things because it looks good or it sounds good, and they don't always think it through to the second and third order effects. So they did the bicycle testing there in the 90s, where you
Mhm.
ran a bicycle at a sub maximal rate. I remember that phrase. And you had a little metronome that would click as you pedaled this bicycle, stationary bike, and there was somebody monitoring your heartbeat. Again, physiologically and all that, it made great sense. But instead of being able to test an entire squadron in maybe an hour, it's taking you 20 minutes individually, one on one with each person.
Oh
So
God.
it's a tremendous time waste.
Oh geez, yeah.
Um, I'm not, never was, and never claimed to be a great physical specimen in any way, but my upper body was pretty good back in the day. And the little heart rate monitor wouldn't go through my pectoral muscle, pick up my heartbeat
You're just too
with the normal
jacked.
strap. Yeah, I was pumped up.
They're like, you
Uh,
failed.
well, they
You
had to
failed. You're
strap
in
an
too shape. You're
ace.
in too good a shape.
They strapped like an ace bandage, like across this way and across this way, and like cinched it down to push this thing into my chest to pick up my heartbeat. Then I could barely breathe. I
Oh my
mean, just crazy
gosh.
stuff. So that was an example of something that on paper made sense and
Hmm.
huge expense to buy all the equipment and everything. And it lasted about 4 or 5 years. Then the Air Force said, "Oh my gosh, this is not working for us. So let's create an actual physical training program now that involved, the three components." And great idea. Again, um, so we started implementing that, I think, shooting early 2000s, I believe it was. Running, crunches, push-ups, whatever. Um, and again, Air Force, being the Air Force, all of a sudden people are showing up to NCO Academy or whatever, and they've got a great fitness report from their squadron, but they failed fitness on the first day of the academy or leadership school or whatever. They couldn't do a single push-up, yet according to their squadron record a week ago, they did 75. It's
Oh
like,
my,
okay, there's something wrong here. So again,
definitely.
and rather than going back to that squadron and holding those people accountable up to the chief, the first sergeant, and the commander, because everybody's got oversight of the program, the Air Force created the Health and Wellness Center, the Hawk, the fitness monitor program, all this other stuff. Again, rather than going back to say to those people that were NCOs, you fail. You fail as an NCO. Whatever actions need to be taken, we need to take those actions. So sometimes we create new programs and new bureaucracies rather than going back to the root cause of something. Um, Uniform changes, everybody gets fired about uniform changes. I've gone through a bunch of them myself. Um,
Why do they
People
keep changing
ran.
them? What is
Well,
up with
part
that?
of it, well, I mean, for the longest time, the Air Force and their Air Force has only had one utility uniform that was Air Force only, the ABU. Every other uniform we've had, from khakis to fatigues to BDUs and now the OCPs, has actually been an Army uniform
Hmm.
that the Army allowed the Air Force to wear. So when the Army was developing the ACUs, there in the early 2000s, whatever it was, out of practice, the Air Force went to the Army and they said, "Hey, we seek approval to wear the ACU as our fatigue uniform as well." And the Army told the Air Force to go pound sand. So the Air Force was kind of stuck then to develop their own uniform for the first time ever. There was a blue version that was first put out with tiger stripes, and everybody
I
laughed
remember
about
that. It
that
looked
one.
like
Yeah,
Street Fighter.
yeah, yeah. The Navy ended up picking it up, or the Kuwaitis did, or some. I've seen it in wear
Hmm.
somewhere or another. So the ABU came out, and then airmen were complaining, and airmen complained since 1947, and some of the complaints are valid, but some of the complaints need to be answered with an explanation as to why we do something as part of our heritage or tradition or whatever. So airmen were complaining about having to resew patches on their BDUs when they PCS, or the cost, even the cost of shoe polish, and the hassle of polishing your boots, having to buy a new unit ball cap when your ball cap got wore out or dirty, whatever. So the Air Force had a great Air Force solution. We'll get rid of all unit patches. We'll get rid of unit ball caps. We'll come up with a suede boot because that's what the airmen wanted. A virtually maintenance free uniform. You wash it, take it out, you put it on, boom, you're good to go. Um, okay. So at the same time, what did the Air Force do to the other side of the coin, the aircrew coin? Did we take away their patches? Did we take away their scarves? Did we take away their different colored name tags? No. So you got one Air Force that you talk about tradition and honor and heritage and all that kind of good stuff, but you don't allow that history and heritage to continue into the majority of the force, the folks that wear ABUs. So fast forward a few years, you know, as the OCP was coming out and people were deploying with that, obviously, and it was really a cost decision to go to the OCP. The Air Force can say everything they want to say otherwise, but it's a cost decision. Why issue you a whole set of uniforms, then issue you a whole other set to deploy? Let's just give you
Hmm.
the deployment uniform from the beginning and call it a wash.
Right.
Then, oh, let's bring back patches. Great idea. Badly implemented because they're all brown.
Right.
Everything's brown.
I call those
I
the
don't know
collector's
about.
editions, like the ones that we can't wear now, and they had to redo every patch.
Oh yeah, I don't
Those are
know
the
about
collector's
you.
edition.
I can't read name tapes when they're brown on brown.
Right.
And I meet people all the time, and they introduce themselves, and I'm like, what's your name again? I can't read your name tape.
It's too
Rank.
camouflaged.
Yeah, I mean, you got brown writing on a brown camouflaged tape. It's like, seriously? I mean, the Army figured it out. Let's do black. Space Force figured it out. Let's do blue. Everybody else has figured it out, but the Air Force must have fell in love with the color brown, I guess. Because everything's brown on brown on brown. And it
Right.
loses any of its value, and you can't read or figure out who people are.
Hmm.
Um, we used to have our specialty badges were multicolored as well, even on the fatigue version. You'd have the blue, the silver, the black, and the brown, so you could see the detail on a specialty badge. Then they put the kibosh on that. It's all single color again for the money, but it's a big blue blob, and you really can't tell the difference between a maintainer badge
Hmm.
and an Intel badge or any other badge. It's a blue blob of fabric.
Right.
So
Yeah.
rather than fix that somehow or another, what did we do? We come out with that thing on the sleeve now
Hmm.
that says something to what you do. And I don't understand most of them, to be honest with you, because I've been out of the out of
I
the
don't either. There's a few I see.
the
I'm like, what
flow.
is that?
Yeah. And then the funniest thing, I mean, and I made a few first sergeants mad when I said this, I think on the Ask a Chief page or elsewhere. I said, if you have to have a thing on your sleeve that says one SGT to tell people you're a first sergeant, there's something wrong there. They should know you're a first sergeant. For
Right.
one thing, you've got an insignia in the middle of your chest if you can read that. I mean, your actions, you carry yourself. You should stand out. People know you're the first sergeant. You don't need it on your sleeve. And I got a bunch of them mad at me when I said that. So whatever. Um, and then if you're an additional duty first sergeant, if your squadron doesn't earn a diamond or they don't have a diamond currently, and you're filling it in, well, you're the first sergeant. More than anything else, you need to wear that one that says first sergeant. Oh no, you got to be a diamond to wear that. It's like it makes no sense then. This makes no sense.
I see what you're
But
saying.
yeah, the uniform things. The other thing recently that really got us retirees all fired up is all the changes to the promotion system and the evaluations. They're trying for the longest time to make all that right, and they've tried from the beginning to make that right. WAPS was a great program for 50 years. It actually was cited in many reports from like the Rand Corporation and other things as a great example of an overall fair and equitable promotion system. It took so many factors into play. And uh, one of the most expensive things that the Air Force was doing was one printing the PDG or whatever they call it now, handbook 1-1 or whatever. Um, Physically printing that every year was a huge cost. And then actually the test writing and the test proctoring processes for WAPS testing, uh, tens of millions of dollars every year. So, well, let's eliminate testing to the rank for Chief Master Sergeant because, by that time, well, what do you need to take a test for? You should know what you're doing. That makes some sense. Well, let's do it for Senior Master Sergeant. Let's do it for Master Sergeant. So now you're down to only two ranks having to actually take written tests for promotion, and you've really taken away that learning opportunity that the PDG used to have where you had a copy of that on your desk or you had a copy of it at home, and it was just a huge source of information for you on being an airman. How does
Hmm.
the leave program work? There's a chapter on the leave program. You could read about the leave program not in the AFI level but a little bit above that, like a summary, and you understood what was going on. So in the mad rush to change things, I think really wiping out the promotion system as a whole, created this whole series of second and third order effects that we hear about all the time, and the Hunger Game memes and all this other crap that goes on. I mean, we created it. We we airmen created because that's what we were asking for, rather than the Air Force stepping back and going, okay, what can we adjust a little bit to fix these things and wait for that to cycle through. We're in such a huge rush to make a massive change, and then we'll sort out the after effects later. EPRs, I thought going to a standard cutoff date, the SCOD, was a great idea because I would see the reports when I was the chief, and I'd see a tech sergeant EPR, and I read the bullets and I saw the markings, whatever. And I go, this looks familiar. And I'd go back into my personal file and I'd find a tech sergeant report from 3 months prior that was the same thing from a different tech sergeant. Copy, paste, copy, paste. So, of course, I would send that back and say, no, this is, write a report for Sergeant Jones, not sending me Sergeant Smith's report again. The meeting. So it's we made these changes, and sometimes we just jump the change too fast and make it too massive. And I understand the whys behind it, but that second and third order effects are hard to deal with down the road.
Yeah, I think our culture is to change things and make things better. And I would theorize that part of the issue with that is people know that they're in that position for a limited amount of time, and their mindset is to leave a mark or to make it better, when sometimes maybe it doesn't actually need that, right?
Right.
We're not in the business of maintaining. It's always make it better, work on it, fix it, change it. And when you have such a high turnover rate at your base, and you all have this mindset of I have to change it or I won't get promoted, that's what we celebrate. Right. Like, who gets promoted from saying I kept this the same? Not many. I would say that's not a thing. So,
and part of that is it goes back to the 1990s when we did a huge drawdown of people. The entire Air Force reorganized. I mean, the entire Air Force reorganized. Major commands reorganized. Major commands went away. We changed all the uniforms, or the blue uniform, and we changed the BDUs to some extent too. And we changed entire guidance. All the Air Force regulations changed the Air Force instructions in about a 2-year period. Because again, that chief of staff was only going to be there for a few years, so changed the entire Air Force. So much to the point where the next chief of staff, when he took over, because AFIs are written very, they're not written strong. They're not written like you must, you shall, you will. It's like, you should, you could, if you think about it, you can maybe want to do this. And the idea was, you empowered the commanders and the command teams. They'll know what's right to do. They'll know what's best to do for their unit. And that's a valid statement to a point. But it's also saying, well, I'm a not good commander. I'm not a good chief. I'm not a good first sergeant. I'm only going to be here for the next 18 months to 24 months. I can kick this can down the road because I'll be gone before the poop hits the fan. And we saw a lot of that. And then the next chief of staff, when he came in, they actually had a sticker, a physical sticker that was mailed out to all the units because we had paper publications then. And you had to put a sticker on the front cover of every AFI that says compliance is mandatory, because people were just flat out ignoring AFIs in the mid 90s. Because again, there wasn't an accountability piece. There wasn't a independent inspection agency like we used to have. So you could back in the day get promoted by not making changes because you were getting outstanding results on inspections, because you were following procedures, you were executing things according to the regulations. So you would get an outstanding rating on different things, right down to you personally. If you were the vehicle control officer for your squadron and you managed, 8 vehicles, whatever, every year you got an actual inspection with a rating assigned to it. So we had ratings to everything. So you could actually sit there at the end of the year and go, wow, Sergeant White did a great job. He's got 7 additional duties. He got 6 outstandings and 1 excellent. His work center got an outstanding rating. he deserves a 5 on his EPR. That was how the process was laid out then. Um, Once you got rid of that independent inspection section, it really left it up then to I don't know, all these other things that you really couldn't
Right.
actually
There's been
assess people on.
there's trends that I've noticed that become popular things to do that would help you promote at that time. At one point it was CCAF, another point it was your degree, another point it was how much you volunteered for. And there's just been these trends and these things. And the biggest complaints that I've seen recently were people were being rewarded way too much for doing everything but their job. That's how they're being promoted. And now if you look at the new promotion,
Right.
paperwork, there's really not much sections for that anymore. It's all like job driven. So
Right.
I've come to the conclusion that I don't know what the best option is. I've seen
And,
so many different ones
right.
that it's really hard for me to tell. But I think our high turnover rate and only being in the hot seat and feeling the obligation to change or fix something, I think that sometimes that could hurt us or set us back with those
Right.
second and third order effects that person's not going to have to deal with because they're not there anymore. So
Right.
I think talking to folks like you and maybe having some sort of council of people who have seen all this history, I think that's worth capturing and considering going forward, in my opinion.
Right. And the Air Force doesn't do itself any favors sometimes. Uh, Going back to the APR days when it was a 9 scale, 1 to 9, most people got 9s, but you see 8s, you see 7s, and it didn't mean that person was a dirtbag or anything. They just weren't an overall 9. So we went to the 5 scale there in the 90s, and you see a few 4s that first go around. But then like the cycle goes through, it's like, oh, Larry didn't get promoted. And we really like Larry. We gave him a 4 last time on WAP scores, so that's only 103 points or whatever it is. We need to take care of Larry. Let's give him a 5 next year. As long as he doesn't, hurt himself or others, we'll give him a 5. So we started doing that. But then at the same time, the Air Force, for every special duty, for everything that's unique, they started requiring overall 5, firewall 5s, and then the last 3 or 4 reports in a row. So the Air Force really tied the hands of the supervisors because you got somebody that's a solid airman, great airman, but they're a 4 on a scale of 1 to 5, and they want to be an MTI. It's like, no, they won't. They won't even take them because you got to have all 5s. Why? 4 is still a good report. On this hand, you're telling me if 4 is a good report. On the other hand, you're saying, oh, he can't do this other job because he's only got a 4. I actually had an airman work for me out when I was the chief, and he wanted to be an MTI. And he came to me and he said, this is right after we did a AFSC merger, the 3 Delta transformation in COM. And he came to me and he said, Chief, I want to apply for an MTI, but I think at the time, even the system wouldn't allow it because he had a 4 on his last EPR. So I asked him why he wanted to be an MTI, and he told me why. And I said, okay. Let's tell you what. I says, if you're really serious, send me an email with all your thing of why you want to be an MTI. And I'll reach out to the chief of the MTIs down at Lackland. And can't make any promises, but I'll explain to the chief kind of the backstory of why you have an overall 4. It's basically his career field changed. He went to a whole new career field without any training or anything and got marked down to a 4. And I shouldn't say marked down, that's not the appropriate terminology either, but he had a 4. So he sent me that email. I read it. I forwarded it with my comments to the chief of the MTIs. Yeah, I'm not asking for any chiefly privileges or special exemptions, but Sergeant XYZ is outstanding NCO, da 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 da, send. And I get an email back from the chief about 3 or 4 days later. He said he appreciated my inputs and everything. And he would look at this NCO's package again. Long story short, he got picked up for MTI duty. He went down to Lackland. He became a master MTI. He got his blue rope. He got MTI of the year.
Wow.
And now he's back in the comm. So I think the Air Force made it so you had to give everybody a 5 to get any of these special duties, when in reality the person wanted to do those duties. DSD is another example, I think, of a bad solution to a situation. You got so many airmen that want to volunteer for things, but they're told by the wrong levels that you can't do that. Uh, I'd have airmen coming to me that wanted to do something, and they said, "Well, I know I can't do that, Chief." I said, "Who said you can't do that?" Well, Master Sergeant Jones said I can't do that. Says he can't say you can't do that. I can't stop you from doing that. If you're serious about that, send me the email. I'll forward it with my recommendation to the MAGCOM functional manager to get you a release from the career field so you can
I
apply
can't
for
stand
that
when
job.
people try to hold people back like that. That
Right.
just, I've dealt with that. I mean,
Oh
I
yeah.
heard that's still a problem to this day. When
It
I was an
always will
age,
be.
I retrained into public health, but I was all excited and shared the news, and I figured out how to retrain. You go on this website, and
Yeah.
these are the jobs. And I was not even thinking that that would be a good thing, but they
Right.
all took it as I'm too good for this career field. When in reality, I'm
Right.
just not. I'm just not a maintenance is not my strength.
Right.
Try as I may, it's not my strength. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And
So
so, oh my gosh,
overall,
they put every roadblock imaginable in front of
yeah.
me. And
Yeah.
my dad still had leverage in the Air Force then, and that's the only time I used a connection because they were straight up not making it possible.
Right.
But my dad intervened through a friend at AFPC and got me the retrain. And
Right.
had it not, I was going to get out. And had it not been for that, I would not be here today. I would not be at the podcast. I would not be doing AFSA. I would not have done honor guard.
Sure.
Look at all the things that I was able to do because of that retrain that they
Right.
almost stopped.
Yeah, and it's like I said, so many people that say no don't have the authority to say no.
Right.
And then I mean, as a chief, you could say, well, you know, I really don't want to support this thing that you want to do because and explain why, rather than just say no. I mean, some people you're just not a good fit for something, or did you think about this? Did you think about that? What other opportunities there are for you, even within the career field. But yeah, the shut somebody down simply because a piece of paper doesn't have the right thing on it is not the good thing there because so many people. I think every airman that graduates basic training when they're finally leave Lackland, I think everyone wants to be a TI. They want to go back and put on the funny hat and the sunglasses and yell at people. Everybody wants to be an instructor after they graduate tech school because what they see and experience. And somewhere along the way, they get thwarted in that. Well, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh, the career field won't release you. When in reality, almost every career field will release so many people every year for special duties.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree, and I've experienced it. So let's hit our second topic here, since we're talking career stuff here. Disappointment and resiliency in your own career. So, what when you hear that, is there certain stories that come to mind that you wanted to share?
Sure. 1998, 99, I made Master Sergeant and I want to become a first sergeant. So at the time, the process was you shadowed actual first sergeants on the base. And I think I did 2 or 3 days in four different units across Keesler. Uh, and basically, you saw, what first sergeants do, and you really learned how different squadrons, each squadron is unique. And what will happen in one unit, one squadron, if you do the same thing in another squadron, the reaction is totally different because of their mindset. Medical is a lot different than maintenance. CE is different than comm, and that's okay because of the way those careers operate. So I did that. I put it in my application package. And I had an interview with the command chief, uh, and he gave me some scenarios and Q&A kind of deal. And I didn't make it. I didn't get the command chief's endorsement or recommendation or concurrence to become a first sergeant. So that pissed me off.
Mhm.
I probably was upset about that for probably a good week. Um, and at the end of the week or so, kind of all right, back to where I am. But our first sergeant in the unit, she said, well, if you're still interested, you could be my backup. You could be my primary, additional duty shirt. We'll send you to the symposium down at Hurlburt. And then for the next 3 years, I was the primary alternate shirt, first sergeant. I hate the word shirt, alternate first sergeant at our squadron down at Keesler. Tech training environment, pretty busy as a first sergeant. Um, in hindsight, I learned a lot from that experience. I learned a lot from being the alternate first sergeant. And without a doubt, if I had become a first sergeant, I don't think the other things in my career never would have happened, obviously. And again, I probably wouldn't have made it to the rank of chief if I had become a first sergeant, just because the timing factor and all that. Way back as a senior airman, I applied to be a tech training instructor. When I was at Guam, I applied to be a tech school instructor. Did not get picked up for it then. 15 years later, I got picked up for it as a tech sergeant. So perseverance, you really want to do something and you get told no the first time, yeah, try again later. You know, assignments, didn't always get my assignments that I necessarily would like to have had. Of course, you get to where you're at, and it always cracks me up. People ask, what's base X like, and you get 50% of the people loved it, 50% of people hated it. And the Air Force answer is always going to be, it's going to be what you make of it anyway. So
Right.
there's happy people and why not miserable people at Hickam, go figure. So,
Right. No,
uh,
you're right.
but the disappointments and things, you get detours and things. I took way longer than I should have to get my CCAF for one thing, because I was that technician guy. Um, I didn't need to have a CCAF to make master. So I figured that's as high as I could ever get anyway. So when I was a tech sergeant, I had my supervisor at the time. He give me my feedback, which is a new thing in the Air Force. The Air Force didn't always used to give feedback either. So that's a positive change that the Air Force has done. Um, but he gave me my feedback and he says, well, sorry, not. He says, you need to get your CCAF degree. And I was a tech sergeant, so I knew everything. That's the rank that knows it all. So I told him back, I says, well, I don't need that to make master sergeant. He goes, no, you're right. You don't, but you're going to need that to make senior and make chief. And I looked at that guy like, chief? What the heck are you smoking, old man? And then flash forward, 12 years later or so when I made chief, and you get all those emails, people send you congratulations and stuff. And about a third of the ones I got were like jokingly saying, oh, the Air Force screwed up, didn't they? Or maybe they'll recount your test scores. But I got an email from this guy. He was a civilian and he was my supervisor way back when as a senior master sergeant. And I was a GS 12 or 13, whatever he was. And he says, congratulations, chief. I know you can do it. God bless John. I was like, holy crap. He remembered me. He saw my name
Dang.
on the list and then gave me that confirmation. That was really awesome. I appreciated that.
That's amazing. No, I think the perseverance is a big part of being successful in the Air Force for sure. And one thing I've come to learn is that because you get that no, a lot of those no's in my life have led to a much bigger opportunity down the road that
Right.
was way bigger and I never even saw it coming. And
Right.
so, just taking any little thing at face value, that might remove you from a future opportunity that you would like and enjoy even more.
Yeah.
And so when a door closes and that's not going to work out, you should be looking for that next thing. I mean, really,
Right.
those are the people that are going to get what they want in the end. It's the people that don't let it ruin their life. They're just immediately onto, okay, what else can I do? Right?
Right.
What
And
else
sometimes
what
the
else is in my
doors,
power to control? What can I improve on? What can I look for?
right.
There's just those are the people that are going to be successful.
Yeah. Sometimes the door's not open either. So you got to go up and jiggle the doorknob a little bit. If
Right.
it's open, if it opens, then you can open it up. If it's locked, then maybe you can't open it. But yeah, I mean, willingness to try things too. And I think, when you look back at, what has the Air Force done for you, all the opportunities that it's presented. And last Wednesday on Ask a Chief or on Wednesday with Chief Gaylor, mean, he talked about opportunities. Yeah, that's one of his big speeches, anyways, on opportunities. And it's like, you get that phone call saying, "Hey, we want you to go do X, or we want you to go do Y." And your first reaction is going to be probably, "I don't want to do that," or "Heck no," or "Quit calling me." But you take those opportunities when you're presented them, because you never know where that's going to lead you. Um, I in processed Robbins Air Force Base in 1987, and I got a DUI. I
Oh
hadn't
wow.
even hadn't really got in process to the unit yet. I was in mobility school, and I was an honor graduate from mobility school, so I'm riding high. I'm like, I'm Mr. Everything, and I got a DUI the night of the party.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
and then I learned some things from that experience for sure. The first one I learned is first sergeants don't bail you out.
Oh no. You got
No,
stuck in
you
jail.
call up the first sergeant and he says, here's the number to the bail bondsman. Be in my office at 7:30 on Monday. And you say, "Yes, chief, I will." I was a staff sergeant, so I learned that. I learned that one. I also learned you never want to meet your new supervisor for the first time at 7:30 on Monday morning in the first sergeant's office.
That is brutal.
So that
Oh
was the
my
very first
God.
time I met my supervisor,
Holy cow.
and but and then as part of the whole process, the chief told me, since at the time they did monthly base promotion parade, they did monthly base parades. So imagine that an active duty base every month having a parade, just like at Lackland. The whole parade with
Mhm.
the formations and the guy walking really fast and the funny music and everything. Well, operational bases did that every month back in the 80s.
Oh
So
wow.
the chief looked at me and he says, "Well, starting out," he goes, "you're on parade detail for the next year." Yes, chief. So every month I was in the parade formation.
Oh
So
my
I got to
God.
learn all about parades very, very well. But it wasn't one of those things, like, well, I'm going to go on social media because it didn't exist then. But, this guy's mean to me. He made me go to the parade every month. I screwed up.
Yeah.
Chief
Yeah.
said, "You're on parade detail." Yes, chief. But the long story is that supervisor became a very good friend of mine as well. And then later, when he went to a green door assignment, uh, lo and behold, I get a phone call from the green door assignment people saying, "Hey, you've been recommended to go to this green door assignment."
What is a
So I
green door
impressed.
assignment?
The classified assignments. If I told you where it was, I had to kill you,
Oh, so
kind
this
of
is like
deal.
you're trusted enough to get, someone vouched for you.
Right, right.
Okay.
Yeah, the only way to get in the green door is somebody in the green door vouches for you or recommends you.
Well,
Uh,
obviously I'm not in that because I don't even know,
so my
even know what that
ability
was.
as a technician and everything impressed my supervisor. So he recommended me to go to the green door assignment.
That's
So I
awesome.
mean, I screwed up. I
Hmm.
rehabilitated. I did what I had to do. Obviously, I doubled down at work. Obviously, because I'm thinking I screwed up. I haven't even started working in the unit yet, and I'm already can't drive. I can't do all these things.
Right.
So I'm gonna work probably twice as hard to prove myself. So that's part of that. You're bouncing back from something that something I did. I created the whole thing.
Hmm.
So there's no other way to say that
No,
one.
definitely, I'm impressed with how you handled that. I can see the other side of the coin, where it's almost like that mistake becomes that person's identity in their
Right.
head, right? Like that's just who they are forever now. And
Yeah.
once they see life that way, they can never get better. They're
Right.
stuck.
Right.
And I'll
And
be
and
honest, I've been there. I know how that feels. So I recognize it when other
right.
people are taking that identity on, and it's like you just need to take them aside and be like, look, you're
Right.
doing it all wrong. So I think in your situation, you went about that the right way. You took what you could control and you maximized it by showing them your character and what you're capable of, and in turn, the trust was rebuilt.
Right. And then later, I kind of used that too, as the chief in the squadron. Every time you get a new allocation notice down, and you get the RIP, and you see the person's ASVAB scores, you'd see their EPR history, you'd see whatever. and a lot of people would say, oh, he got a 4 on his last EPR. Oh, he PCS without a decoration or whatever, whatever. And it's like they set this mindset up that, oh, we're getting a dirtbag, we're getting a loser. And I'd be like, time out. You don't know anything about this guy or gal. You're prejudging them before they even got here. You
Right.
know, truth be told, a lot of people should be getting 4s and 3s that didn't. You don't know the
Hmm.
story behind this. You know,
Hmm.
give the person the benefit of the doubt. And if they are struggling, it's your job as a supervisor to get them back on track. Or if they don't want to get on the track, then we will solve that one too. But more than most of the examples I had that I could think of was that person had a little glitch, a little blip. That report came out and they took that little thing into an account and marked it accordingly, whatever. But they were not bad airmen or anything like that. They were just, but yeah, if you jump to conclusions and prejudge people, nothing good ever comes from that.
No, you're not even giving them a chance, and I've seen that so many times too. And I'm very happy to hear that you were kind of that voice of reason. And I mean, you're a chief now, or you were a chief, and I can see that the characteristics that you held, the values that you held. I could imagine you were probably a great fit for that. So thank you for sharing that. Let's hit our last topic here.
Yeah.
Okay. You're a retiree. You've been retired for a hot minute now, but you're still more involved than ever, right? You're on the Ask a Chief Facebook group. So now you got social media in your life, even as a retiree, where you can kind of connect with folks, answer questions. And then you're a huge part of the AFSA community with writing policy and representing your chapter. And I mean, I saw all the awards you won. So obviously you're doing really well there too. Um, what has that meant to you as a retiree, and why do you think that's so important?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about how I got here. I never planned on joining the military. I was in college to be a music teacher, and I was playing in several bands in the Chicago area, which is a great experience. But when you're 18 years old, it's probably not the best thing to be doing, playing in bar bands and different things. So actually, I did not graduate college. I dropped out before I got kicked out. So I had to look for something to do, and I joined the Air Force. Never intending for it to be more than probably a 4-year job to kind of get refocused or get focused. I didn't have any focus to get focused in some direction, and it just kind of spawned into a career that again went longer than I thought it ever would have. I made master sergeant, and I thought, wow, I made it to master sergeant. And then somebody says, well, you can make senior, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, you're crazy too. Made senior, and then it's like, you're gonna make chief, and I'm just like, okay, and that did, and then I find myself as a chief sitting there going, okay, I'm a chief now. What does that mean? And all the things that I thought about that I experienced coming up, if any of those things that are wrong are still wrong, are still broken, are still not what they should be, what can I do to start getting some of those things fixed? So obviously some of it are just simple Air Force things, which you can do in a squadron level or whatever. But then this AFSA thing. I was at Fort Meade, Maryland. I was a chief inside the National Security Agency at the schoolhouse level. Um, and I saw an email popped up about AFSA Chapter 254 is having a meeting this date and place, whatever. So it's I've been a AFSA member forever. I've never actually been to a chapter meeting, mostly because I was never really at a base per se, or I was in a tenant unit, or I didn't even know there was a chapter there or whatever. So chiefly curiosity said, "Oh, I'll go to this meeting." So I went to a meeting, and there's about 5 people there. Oh, chief, they're all excited. And whenever somebody gets excited to see me, I'd always look over my shoulder thinking there's somebody really important behind me because I'm not that great of a person to get excited about. But I went to the meeting And I learned how the chapter's running and what they were doing. And I started going to every meeting once a month. And I don't remember sending out an email. I don't remember telling anybody to go to the chapter. I don't remember doing any of that. I just was going. And we outgrew the room that we're meeting in. We went from 5 people to 10. We outgrew the other room that we're meeting in. Within about 6 or 9 months, we were meeting over in the Airman Leadership School building and had about 30 people at a meeting in
Oh
about six to
wow.
9 months.
Holy cow.
And, you know, just being present as a chief says a lot. And being absent as a chief says much more than that. So I always found it very difficult to see any types of meetings when there's not a chief present. Even if I'm sitting in the back of the room writing something in my notebook that has nothing to do with the meeting I'm in, I'm thinking about something else I'm taking notes on
Hmm.
or writing down. But I'm in this organization. I'm showing my. I think it's important if this organization exists because I'm here. Um, I'm not going to probably do a whole lot because again, the chief should be there to help guide and mentor, not take things on. I remember I was at a meeting at Fort Meade for the it's called the First Six organization. They combined the Airmen's Council and the 5-6 into a First Six. They were talking about going to go do a pizza thing for the Super Bowl. So they needed, they're going to do this, and all the favors say aye, aye. Okay, so they're going to buy pizzas for a Super Bowl party for the dorm residents. So then they go, okay, who wants to organize this? It was like crickets. So I was sitting in the back. So I question, oh yes, chief. I said, so the person that organizes it has to do what? Like call dominoes and place an order, and then go pick it up and bring it with soda and stuff? Yeah, that's it. I go, so y'all voted to spend money to do this, but nobody wants to make a couple of phone calls and go to the commissary and pick up soda? Then they all kind of then finally said, oh, dude, it's like, okay, I mean, come on. The airmen are looking for you guys to help out here, and you're willing to spend money, but you're not willing to spend a little bit of time. And I found
Hmm.
early on, I mean, if I would spend 2 hours outside of my office in different meetings or things, it saved me, I don't know how many hours off duty time. Uh, Getting those late night phone calls of somebody's in trouble or somebody's arrested or whatever. 4 years as a squadron chief, two different assignments, zero DUIs.
Oh wow.
And not because my airmen were not drinking. I know they were, but they all had plans. They all knew everything. But also, I think our leadership team, myself, commander, the first sergeant, when we would go to the club or we would go do different things, we set a positive example of responsible behaviors. Uh, you have a drink, you have two sodas or two glasses of water. If you
Mhm.
feel you're not right, you get a ride home or you call your spouse or whatever it is. So if you don't demonstrate responsible behaviors, I don't think it's realistic to expect your airmen to do the same. Uh, and you can stay all night briefing people and whatever, but again, you've got to give a good example yourself. But later on in life, since I've been here at Ellsworth, retired, um, again, it's the learning part of it, learning the different things that affect people that never affected me personally. Issues with the child care center. We never
Hmm.
had any. We didn't have our son in the CDC, so I don't have any personal experience there. I don't have any personal experience of dealing with EFMP issues or a lot of the other things that our folks go through. But if you don't know it, firsthand yourself, you talk to those people, you listen to those people, that are going through these things. So you understand exactly what they're going through so that you can then figure out, well, how can I engage on that? Can I engage on that? And who do I engage on that with? Uh, do I engage with the local leadership on the base? Do I bring it up to the congressman? How do I proceed to make sure that this doesn't happen again to somebody else or it gets fixed for this particular airman? So there was a big deal here in South Dakota a few years ago for spousal licensing. So if your spouse was licensed in Nebraska as a teacher or a cosmetician or a massage therapist, whatever it is, when UPCS to South Dakota, their license ended at the Nebraska state line. So you
Oh
had to take the
no.
South Dakota licensing, you had to do all this stuff. It was expensive and everything else.
Mm.
So they're going to have a meeting, or the spouses club is going to have this thing to discuss that on a Saturday morning, and they're going to have coffee and donuts. So if you have coffee and donuts, there's a high probability I'm going to show up. So I showed up, and I was the only male in the room, and I heard all these stories from the spouses about the issues they were facing, and I had no idea. I had no idea. So at the end of the session, it got to me, and I introduced myself and what I did with AFSA, and I says, well, I know the South Dakota legislature was coming back into session on Monday. This was a Saturday, and I know there was a bill pending in the legislature. And so I get home this afternoon after breakfast here. I'll write letters to 40 something state senators and state representatives urging their support for this bill. So, oh, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. So I did that when I got home. I sent like 40 emails, same email, but sent 40 times to the different senators and representatives from the state of South Dakota. And when you write to any politician, you get one of three responses. You get no response at all. You get an automated canned computer response, or you're going to get an actual response from a human. And I got variety of those. Uh, and I was pleased I got some really good personal responses as well. So the following week after that, they were going to be down visiting the local area, the legislators. So I went to this function that they put on, and I was expecting to be able to get up and point my finger and pound on the table and demand justice or whatever. Well, the
You came ready to
10
fight.
yeah, I came ready to fight. Again, there was donuts as well, so I was there for
Oh, there you
donuts.
go.
But
Yeah.
there was the 10 representatives on the dais, and I authored the bill, I co-sponsored the bill, I supported the bill. The bill had passed unanimously through
Oh wow.
the committees and was going to the full House and the full Senate for passage. So I'm like going, okay, now what do I do? I was like all fired up, and I was like, oh, so I went and had a donut.
Back to the donuts. Yeah. At
Yeah.
that point.
So
And all it took
I
was you just asking the question, just bringing
well,
it
and
up.
I was tracking the bill on my smartphone on this app that the state has, and I saw it pass unanimously through the full House and the full Senate, and was sent to the governor for signature
Oh my
on like
gosh.
on like Wednesday or Thursday. And it was like Saturday morning. I'm at home, I'm drinking my coffee by the fireplace. So I saw this. So I messaged the governor on her Facebook page, Governor Christian Nome, introduced myself. I says, ma'am, just checking the status of House Bill 1111. I see you've been signing other bills, and I was just wondering when you're going to sign this one. Hit send, my phone down, drank some coffee, picked up my phone. Hi, Kevin. Thanks for your service. Thanks for your continued service. I signed it on Friday. It'll be announced formally on Monday. Thanks again, Christie,
Oh
Governor
wow.
Nome. So I
Holy
was like,
cow.
holy crap. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
And then I got involved in the base allowance for housing thing. And to be honest with you, I got involved with that on the Ask a Chief page, in all honesty, initially to shut somebody up. Because there was a tech sergeant that was really complaining about their BAH. And again, I thought it can't be as bad as you say it is. You're living above your means or whatever it is. So I started looking into the whole process. And I spent I don't know, 100 hours or so researching it and studying it. And I put together a report. I did a survey. I got all these responses. And then, I put it all together and I sent it up to the chain of command. I sent it to the local congressmen, our senators here in the state of South Dakota. And the PowerPoint became known as Kevin's PowerPoint. And it floated around all the MAGCOMs. Because I'd see some of the MAGCOM chiefs later at an AFSA function or something. They go, "You're Kevin, right?" I go, "Yeah." "You're the guy with the PowerPoint, right?" Yeah. So my thing was floating around,
Right.
getting a lot of love, going up to the chief master of the Air Force's office, going all around. And I was like, okay, they're all working it. They're all working it, and I got that. So this last year, there was three pieces of legislation introduced into the National Defense Authorization Act from the representative from the state of Washington up near Lewis McCord, whose name I just can't remember right now. But she wrote three pieces of three bills that got into the NDAA that were three of the 10 recommendations from my report.
Wow.
So I go,
That's
that's pretty
wild.
cool. Now, granted, this was like 5 years in the making. So, things take time.
You're a very patient
Uh,
man. That's one of the best skills you got.
I
You're
am
patient
patient
and you
and I'm
chip
not patient
away.
at the same time. Um,
But
but you know,
you're just patient enough where like you're chipping away at things one step at a time, but then you're making like real positive changes for people's lives. I mean, it's tremendous, what you've done.
oh, thanks. I appreciate that. And that's just one of those things, And when I was doing all the BAH stuff, I learned so much. And we took a lot of that back into practice here locally at Ellsworth, with the housing office through the command channels. Um, we had a subcommittee here in the area because Rapid City is going through a huge growth spurt. The state of South Dakota went through a big growth spurt during COVID as people were moving here from a couple of the other states because of our freedoms that we have here. But anyway, um, so we had a real housing crisis, and now we got the B-21 mission coming here. So more airmen are coming here eventually. So I got on a housing subcommittee downtown for the community. And again, being AFSA, being an independent voice, and being myself, I was able to say things about the Air Force, the DoD processes that people in uniform or people employed by the Air Force really can't say.
Right.
Because insubordination is a crime. I've got an LOR about that years ago as well.
Oh, geez.
But yeah, as a master sergeant, don't never get a LOR, kids. That's not a good idea. Uh, but we educated the developers, we educated the realtors here in town on the BAH process. And as a result, I can't say as a direct result, but part of what we're seeing now in the housing industry here in South Dakota, in Rapid City, is a lot more townhomes and apartment buildings being built than before.
Wow.
Uh, because that's really what the airman profiles are based on for the majority of the force. E9 is the only enlisted rank that qualifies as a single family home for BAH.
Oh, wow.
So 1% of the enlisted
Right.
force qualifies for a single family home for basic allowance for housing determination. Very few people know that.
Jeez, I didn't know that. That's wild.
When I tell the developers, I said, you could build 10,000 homes tomorrow in Rapid City. It won't raise airmen's BAH a penny. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, well, for one thing, housing, we don't consider houses. For the second thing, we never consider mortgages or house purchases. It's only rentals only. But for the majority of people, it's townhomes and condominiums, which we don't really have, and apartments, which we really don't have the inventory here in Rapid City. But we are getting that inventory now. But then
That's
you get
great.
airmen complaining that they don't want to live in an apartment, which you got to remind them of the law. That's what you're financially based upon. So,
Right.
uh, but yeah, it's a constant cycle. It's a constant cycle.
Definitely.
Uh, but being like I said, being an independent voice, which I am, and even to the point of having a meeting with the wing commander before and telling him that, sir, for myself and for the Air Force Sergeant Association, if there's an issue or something that we differ from the Air Force policy on that affects quality of life for the airmen, I reserve the right to state a countering opinion or something about
Hmm.
that. And I said that. I was like, oh shit. Oh, sorry, Josh. I cussed.
Oh no,
I
it's
said,
all good.
oh crap. What have I done again now? I've stepped in it again. And he just kind of he leaned back in his chair a little bit and looked back at me. He goes, Kevin, I know that. And thank you. Okay, cool. Thanks. All right. I did a thing again. I sit there, I see stuff, and I go, why? It can't be as bad as you say it is. It's usually my first impression, because I know
Mhm.
people, airmen are people. You tend to exaggerate or only give you one side of the story, and that's human nature. But we
Right,
had a lot of
absolutely.
issues with privatized housing here too. And I saw all these things on our family's Facebook group, and I said, it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. So I did another survey and I put it out just to the Ellsworth community. And I got some good responses back. And actually the corporate headquarters for the privatized housing people called the wing to complain about me.
Oh my God, that's how you know you're doing a good
So
job.
the MSG deputy, she came by my office when I was still working on base as a GS, and she just came by to visit. And how you doing? I said, good, good. So she said, oh, we got a complaint about your survey, and I said, okay. And I was waiting for her to tell me to knock it off. So I was kind of getting in my defensive posture. So where's this going to go? And she ended up saying, oh no, it's all good. I said, okay. So have a nice day. So you too, ma'am. Then on her way out, she touched my arm and she goes,
Oh
so, oh,
wow.
okay, cool. So, and then, 6 months later, the whole thing hit the fan with privatized housing. And we saw the big fines that come down, and the Air Force created the position of the housing advocate, all these things. And it never should have got to that point. Uh, you've got first sergeants, you've got commanders, you've got command chiefs, you've got supervisors. Everybody should have always been raising the stinky flag
Mhm.
anytime your airmen are getting mistreated. So it shouldn't come to the big reaction that the government normally has to do, but that's life.
Yeah, sometimes it does reach that far. And, I'm so thankful we got folks like you in our corner, who can be that voice, and I gotta say, Chief, you are a interesting guy because on one hand,
I hope that's a
you're
compliment.
it's a compliment. You're on one hand, your demeanor is very calm, you're very approachable. Uh, and on this other side of your personality, you have this rebellious nature, this risk-taking nature that in a healthy way that is just like the other side of the coin to your personality. And, I really appreciate that. I think you have a lot of tremendous qualities that make you a very unique leader, where you have two different sides of the coin that are kind of polar opposites, but you somehow merge these qualities together. And you're still using it to this day to help airmen, at your base and in the Air Force with issues that they normally either don't know how to bring it up or they don't have the power to. And you found a way to do that through your unique skill set and just what makes you you. And I just want to thank you for doing that for us.
Well, thanks, Josh. Appreciate that.
All right. Hey, we had an amazing conversation, Chief. I mean, we hit all sorts of stuff and we went down some rabbit holes, but they were all wonderful rabbit holes to go down. But before we close this out, I was just wanted to give you the floor if you had any final thoughts.
Sure. Every day is a new day. There's probably a bumper sticker or somebody wrote a book with that title. I don't know. Uh, but you face challenges every day. Some of them you can definitely tackle yourself. Some of them you need help for. And I would just say to anybody that's got those challenges that they can't handle themselves, no matter what it is to seek out that helping person or that helping agency. Um, and we all can speak of tragedies that we've dealt with and things. And so many of it is, it comes down to that that person not feeling comfortable to seek help, or not knowing of where to seek help. And when you're ever in a position that you've had somebody in your unit or your circle of friends that uh, has ended up in a bad place, we always sit back together and play Monday morning quarterback and figure out, the signs that we missed. And we'll continue to do that, unfortunately. But again, there's something wrong, you see, fix it. If you can fix it yourself, great. If you need assistance, you need help, you need resources. Again, if you're in the military, that's what your leadership is there for. Uh, if you're dealing with stuff on a daily basis, I said stuff, so I didn't cuss a second time.
Thank you.
If you're dealing with stuff on a daily basis, you shouldn't be dealing with that on a daily basis. Stuff needs to get fixed. Stuff needs to get taken care of. And you know, it may not seem like it at times, but your leadership does want you to succeed. They don't want you to be happy. They want you to be successful. Um, there's nothing better as a leader to see your folks thrive. To sit back and you sit there as the squadron chief and you see one of your airmen that was not a stellar airman, that had their issues early on, that really struggled with leadership, struggled with airmanship, struggled with just life in general. And then literally in the matter of a year or less, totally turned their life around. And you sit there in the ballroom at the Airman Leadership School graduation, and that airman's name is called out as a John L. Levitt Award winner. And you're just like going, yep. And then that airman's kind of like, they don't even know where to begin in their thank yous, because so much has happened in their life in the Air Force that you might have played just a very small part in. Uh, but to see that person totally turn around, and later you see them after they PCS and they've made a couple more stripes and they've had more children or whatever it is, you know that that is greater than any reward you can ever get on your LES or in a retirement paycheck. The known the impact you've had on people, um, and you know that the better that they have come out of that. Uh, and sometimes you don't even realize what you did. And they come up and they thank you later. You're like, oh, okay, great. And to be honest with you, sometimes you're like, I don't even know who you are. You're thanking me for something because I don't recognize you, or I can't read your stupid name
Mhm.
tape because it's brown on brown or whatever. But it's like, oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. But yeah, I mean, it's just a great feeling, and it's
No, it
something I
is.
hope everybody can get some point in time where you're really making that great positive impact for folks.
Yeah, and you kind of gave me a final thought right there. And my final thought is you're not just helping their career, you're helping their whole life, right? And that's essentially what you're saying. Those little instances where you interjected and it could have seemed small and insignificant to you, but that put that person on a whole different path of their life. Where they have a family now, they're thriving now. And to be honest, you're speaking to my soul a little bit because that's me. Around my 6 year mark, I was isolated, drinking every day, depressed, miserable. I felt lost. I felt straight up lost. I did have one mentor at every base, though. I will say, I did have that one person at every base that did help me and guide me in the right direction ever so slightly until one day I am where I'm at today. And it was those little interactions with people, with that one person in my life. It was those little conversations on night shift when I just had something on my mind and wanted advice, but I felt too dumb to ask in front of everyone. It's those little conversations that shifted me in the right direction from that one person at each assignment. And they definitely got me here today. And they basically saved my life, if I'm being honest with you, because I would have passed away at the rate that I was going. As a matter of fact, I almost did from a heart virus. So had they not been in my life, and they might not even realize it, there's some of them that don't. There's some of them who straight up have no idea that they saved my career and in turn saved my life. So that's my final thought.
Great. No, it's a good final thought, Josh. Yep.
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for listening. If you listened to the end, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We had this Summit Special Edition episode with Chief Master Sergeant Kevin Ott, who is basically AFSA royalty at this point. I want to thank you for that too, and all those awards you won. Holy cow, you're just crushing it. Keep going. Hey, thanks for listening all the way to the end. You're incredible. You're amazing. Thank you. And as promised, I'm going to tell you my biggest takeaway after this talk with Kevin. It's that he understands that time is the most valuable resource. And he leveraged his time and was strategic about his time and how he spent that with people. He invested in people with his time. He made that a priority, and it made his life as a leader on the back end a million times easier. He had 0 DUIs during his tenure as a chief, and he attributed a lot of that to the investment he made on the front end, to his team and to his airmen, empowering them, letting them have creative control, and stepping in when he needed to. So he was ruthless with his time. He was strategic with his time. And when he invested in his airmen, they invested in him. So that's my biggest takeaway. Don't underestimate the power of a few simple conversations. It could have a tremendous impact on that person's life. Thank you so much for listening to this Summit Edition podcast. I'll catch you next week. See ya.